Welcome to the Adversity Diaries. I'm Carlos Jimenez, your host, and in today's episode, we are diving into the world of modern pentathlon with none other than Tyler Evans. From mastering 5 diverse disciplines to representing the USA on the world stage, Tyler's journey is one of the resilience, versatility, and yielding determination. Whether it's fencing, swimming, horse riding, shooting, or running, Tyler has faced it all with a relentless spirit. Get ready for an inspiring conversation that uncovers the grit behind the glory, the challenges that shaped him, and the mindset that keeps him pushing boundaries. Look at that. Man, that's beautiful. Did I miss something there? I don't know.
No, I think you covered it all.
Are you sure? I mean, I can't more adjectives to describe your
No.
part.
You're making me blush.
No worries. Thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me.
I know you are probably getting ready for what's next in your life or career right now, but we'll get into that later. But before we do that, I actually have this segment that I want to play with you and just go with it, okay? So this
Yes, sir.
would you rather questions, all right? Pretty simple, straightforward. And then you tell me what's the best answer, right? Ready?
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, let's go. So would you rather compete in a pentathlon where you have to fence with one arm tied behind your back, or swim the entire course using only one leg?
So in fencing, we only get to use your dominant hand. So I'm gonna take the tied behind the back because it's gonna play into the strengths. I'll still be able to use my dominant hand.
Do you need it for balance at all? Not really.
You could honestly you could tie it behind your back, and I think you'd be all right. Maybe you'd fall off balance a little bit here and there if you try to lunge or you try for flush. But at the end of the day, I think you'd still be all right.
Nice. Is it swimming one of your strengths? No, is it running? Running, I think.
Running now, yeah. I swam when I was in college, but throughout the years, we'll talk about it. I was a pro triathlete for a while. When I switched from swimming to triathlon, running became more of a strong suit.
Nice. All right, next question here. Would you rather have the perfect shot every time in the shooting event or flawless run in the cross-country segment?
I would rather shoot perfect. That is, if you shoot perfect, you don't need to run so fast. That's the perfect part. I like running, but if you shoot well, you don't have to run all out.
How so? Why is the shooting part of the sport so important?
So, I mean, if you look at the best shooters in our sport right now, they're good runners as well. But the better you shoot, so if you can go 5 for 5 in the shooting range in under 10 seconds, and you can do that 4 times in a row, you're going under 40 seconds in the shoot, for in the category of the shoot. If you're shooting 40 while somebody else is shooting a minute and 20 or even a minute, you're just eating into the race. So you can run the same time, but if somebody's shooting, or you can run 2-3 seconds faster than somebody in a 600, but if they're shooting 5 seconds faster than you every lap, you're just never going to be able to play catch up that way.
Wow. So basically you can win or lose.
Yes, in the shoot, for sure.
Shoot. That's it.
You can be the best runner in the world, and you still could not shoot, and it's over.
Wow. And then I know the pointing system, I mean, we can talk about this later, but the pointing system will be different for the shooting and running compared to swimming, all these things, right?
And fencing and riding, yeah. The points are skewed a little bit to each of the sports.
Oh, okay. We're going to talk about that in a second. I think that's interesting for us to understand. Now, would you rather train exclusively in a harsh winter climate or sweltering summer heat?
So we were talking a little bit earlier, and I was training in Egypt for almost a year. So I've trained in the sweltering heat, and I was raised in central New York, so I dealt with some harsh winters, and I'll definitely take the heat over the cold. I'm not a cold person.
What's the weather in Egypt in summer? Were you there in summertime or?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was always in the 40 degrees Celsius, which is around 110 plus during the day. And you'd walk outside, and I don't know if people can relate, you walk into a sauna and you take a deep breath and it burns your nose. That would happen walking outside.
Wow.
So like it was crazy. We didn't train like in the dead of like the middle of the day. That would you just that'd kill you.
Yeah.
But we did train. It was hot, and I still would rather do that than the cold.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah, I wonder if that so you have to train in the morning early and then late in the afternoon.
And then the later in the afternoon, yeah. Very rarely did we train at like noon, unless we were fencing and we were inside.
Okay. Wow. Next, would you rather win a gold medal with a team or a silver medal individually?
I mean, my sport's very individual. You go out there and you do it all by yourself. I I've always been more of a team person though, so I'll go with the team for sure.
For the team? Yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean I grew up playing team sports and I liked the aspect of them. Just in the area that I was raised, the team sports weren't very good, so I just had to go off on my own and do more of the individual sports.
Yeah.
But I've always enjoyed the team aspect, and even in my own sport, like I had 6 coaches. At the end of the day, it was a team effort when I would go out and compete. It was still there was more than just me going out there to compete. It felt like.
Yeah. I guess the feeling is different, right? Like if you just go out there for yourself, it wouldn't feel the same if you go out there to do it for your team. No?
I know some athletes they're super self-driven, which I'm self-driven as well, but like I like having that team behind the team or teammates and that fact. Like it just makes even in pentathlon there's what's called relays, so you can have a mixed gender relay and a mixed male relay, and I always loved competing with Amro. When we would go and compete, I used to love those competitions.
Yeah, of course. I think Ambro is. I mean, I know Ambro is a Jasiro, right? I know Ambro.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's one of the. He was one of the best.
He was one of the best. Still is. He's an icon in the sport, and I was lucky to be able to train and compete with him and call him a friend. And it was always fun when we would go and compete in the relays together, versus the individual. I just enjoyed it more.
Of course, I can imagine you're running, you're doing stuff with the best. You probably feel more confident too, huh? Like how would you?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you have him on your team, it was especially when we would fence. He would fence first, I would fence second, and he'd win. I'd be like, "Oh, we got this," and I'd go and win.
Wow. Yeah, if you have to make a comparison, because I think for people to understand, right? Like, okay, what is Ambro in basketball?
Amro in basketball in his prime, he was like the leader of the especially within Egypt too. I mean, I wouldn't call him like a Michael Jordan, but maybe like a Charles Barkley, like one of the guys who in the 90s that you would see now and be like, oh, they started that transition of the sport to be like that big. I mean, today you would say like a Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, like he was the best in the sport for a very long time. So that's just to give people kind of the idea. He's not. There was one other guy in the world who was the like LeBron James, but Amr was always right up there with him as well.
Yeah, cool. Shout out to Ambro, by the way.
Yeah, big shout out, right?
Of course. Next, would you rather have a limited supply of top tier equipment for every event, or the opportunity to train with any coach in the world?
I'm definitely gonna take any coach in the world because I did that. I went and trained with the best in the world. The equipment that you can get is only going to be useful as well as your skills are honed in. So that coaching piece is invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's not that you're going to go and buy I don't know, what are you going to buy? A new gun and you're like, okay, I'm going to shoot 5 of...
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter at this point.
The gun is exactly right. But like for the people that are like in cycling, you go out and buy a $20,000 bike. I mean, if you're only pushing out 100 watts, you're still, unless it's electric and it's going to drive you forward, you're still only going to push out 100 watts. It doesn't make you that much better.
Nice. Yeah, that's true. Next question here. So, would you rather master one of the five pentathlon events to perfection or be consistently strong across all five? I think that's a given, huh?
Yeah, be consistently strong. If I was going to be the best in one, I would just go and do that one, I guess, right?
Yeah.
If I was going to be the best runner, I would just go run at the Olympics, I guess, or at events. So being the well balanced athlete is what pentathlon's all about.
Mm-hmm. And so, buddy, if you could pick one of them, like what would be the hierarchy of like you being the best in this event could give me more chances to win major?
It would definitely be, man.
Yeah.
So if you're the best fencer, you give yourself a great chance of being in the top for sure. But if you can't run and shoot now, you can't compete in our sport. So you have to be one of the best fencers. You have to be a good fencer. And then you have to be one of the best laser runners now as well. Wow. So it used to be where if you were a dominant fencer, you could maybe get away with having a bad shoot. You can't have a bad shooting experience now, or else you'll get gobbled up in the run and shoot.
Wow, that's interesting. The sport is changing a lot, huh?
It is. It adapts. People figure out what works for them, and then once it starts to work for one person, people start to change, and it's kind of just everybody knows now kind of the recipe for success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, next question. Would you rather face a formidable opponent in fencing or have to ride an unpredictable horse in the equestrian event? I guess you have a story for this one.
It was. You do that every time you compete, right? So I think I'd rather have the unpredictable or the fencing one, because I fence those guys all the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm used to that. You can have a bad horse though, and that'll ruin your day. And there's plenty of examples on the internet of that, but I've also had my own experiences for sure with a poor riding experience. Or my worst one was I was riding in a nationals, like the first time I started doing pentathlon, and both of the stirrups broke on this horse, and I was just like, what am I gonna do now? And then it was just over at that point. So like, you never know what you're gonna get in our sport. And the horseback riding was always, I love horseback riding, don't get me wrong, but it was always things can go very good, or things can just be done very quickly.
I feel like, I remember this when I went to Pan American Games, and I mean,
those horses were, yeah, I remember the stories.
Yeah. So the horses were not tame as usual, and they're not as trained, and they're not comfortable with people and everything. So, and you will have, younger in sports people like coming through, and they couldn't handle the horses. Especially, unfortunately, I think people that didn't have like the character to manage these races. Yeah. How does that work? You have to have I hear that all the time. I feel like I have a dog. You know what I mean? Like, is it the same? Like you have to send
it's animal handling skills. So that's people that don't understand horseback riding won't understand what it's like, but you can get accustomed. It's uncomfortable, but you train that way. You go and you ride random horses. You find coaches that have multiple horses so that you're not riding the same horse all the time and getting so accustomed to that. And then when you go to competition, you're not so nervous to be given a random horse. You've got the skills to be able to figure out little idiosyncrasies that each horse has. You talk to the trainer of that horse when you get to the competition, and they might be like, okay, this horse needs a crop, but no spurs, or you need both. So then you know that you need a little bit more leg, and you need the crop in order to get them motivated. So it's that if you don't ride enough, you can't expect to have success. It's like any sport. So you have to put in those hours to get used to it. I know a lot of riders that are like, you're crazy for riding a random horse.
Yeah.
Yes, and if you get accustomed to it, you just deal with those situations the best that you can.
Yeah. So to give more context to this, correct me if I'm wrong, but so people that are listening understand. So basically, when you go to a competition, you literally get a random horse, right? Like you get to choose? No. So the person who ends up first after the fencing round, they pick out of a hat, or they pick a number, and then that's the horse that starts their horse that they picked.
But then from the first place all the way to whoever's in the last place it happens to be, they do a ranking list of those horses down, 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 so that you're assigned the horse. So even the person who's in first didn't really know what horse they were picking. They just got to draw their horse. And then you're assigned based on that, and you meet your horse. You get a warm-up period before you go out onto the course, but it's not like it's just minutes. You have 15 minutes to warm up, get ready, and then you're out in the arena and you're doing your show jumping course.
So you say 15, 1-5, right?
Yes.
So you for 1-5, 15 minutes just in a random country, right?
Yeah. I know the rules, but
yeah,
iffy on the definitiveness. I think it's 15 minutes because it's a running list. It's very specific too. It'd be like, okay, your mount time is, 9:47. You don't get to mount at 9:46. You mount at 9:47. You get into the arena, and then it goes very specific to the time, and you only have so many jumps in the warm up. And then if you're not showing good skills, you can get pulled off your horse in the warm up arena before you're allowed to go out onto the course too.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's so interesting. I mean, this is the people, I'm sure, I don't want to call out how much percent will listen to this, but a lot of people will not this part of the sport because I feel like they see you with a horse, they might think that that's your horse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A lot of people ask, like, how do you fly your horse? And it's like, yeah, I wish I had that much money. Wish to own a horse and then to be able to fly, like, get out of here. Come on. Exactly. But just so, like, we're also clear, the sport also changed recently. So it used to be riding, and now after this Olympics, we're not riding anymore. It's obstacle course racing now. So that's I know. I think you didn't even know. I don't think so. I just threw a wrench in the whole kind of production of this. So pentathlon's changing too.
Yeah.
So it's fencing, swimming, running, shooting, and it used to be horseback riding, but now it's like American Ninja Warrior obstacle course racing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's for 2028. No, I think they're getting ready for
2028 and going forward, it'll be obstacle course racing.
Interesting. That changes a lot.
It changes a lot. Yeah.
I think that opens the field for a lot of people.
It does, and that's kind of the goal of the sport now, is we're trying to open it up. Well, the UIPM, which is the governing body for modern pentathlon, and then the IOC, which is the Olympics, oversees the UIPM. So the IOC told the UIPM, you got to change in order to stay in our Olympics. So they changed to having the obstacle course racing. And so far, it was a little iffy, but now the general consensus is people really like it. It puts on a really great show. It's fast. It's just like American Ninja Warrior. It's a little bit quicker to make for our sport, but it's interesting and it's fun. Like, people enjoy that.
How do you train for? Because I'm sure they're gonna change the obstacles, right? Like, they're gonna put like different things.
There's like specific things that need to be in place, but they can be different. So I've only trained horses so far. Yeah. I'm starting to train obstacles now, and it's a whole different game. Yeah, it's a different skill.
Wow.
We'll just see how it progresses.
Well, it's gonna be fun. I mean, I'm sure it's gonna be more. I think, like what you said, people now gonna be like intrigued to watch it more, probably.
Yeah, if you're not into horseback riding, it's not your thing. That's okay. I personally really enjoyed it, and I like horses. But nobody asked me specifically my opinion and to make the change. So now it is what it is, and you got to deal with it, right? And do the best that you can.
That's cool. Well, I mean, you know what? We can scratch all the conversation we had before this. Stop here. No, just kidding. No. All right. Next question here. Let's see. Would you rather start every event with a time penalty, but have a guaranteed stamina, or begin with a head start, but not guarantee of endurance?
So
that's interesting because
it's difficult, because if you start with a big enough head start, you might be okay. But I don't think, especially now with the way that it works, I think I'd rather start with a deficit, knowing that I've got the endurance to catch up, and hopefully that stamina leads to some good shooting as well.
Nice. That's cool, man. Next, would you rather have a perfect mental game but face physical setbacks, or be in peak physical condition with the challenge of mental hurdles?
That I think that's an interesting question for different sports. Specifically for my sport, having the mental toughness is, and I think a lot of athletes can say the same thing. When you get to a high level, nearly everybody has the same physical capacity. Maybe somebody's got a little bit more physical abilities, but having a strong mental belief in yourself and having the mental capacity being high will always make a bigger difference, in my opinion.
Have you been through a period of like a mental challenge, like you couldn't, perform well because, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you go through those phases, you're like, man.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, I've been through a lot of ups and downs in my career for sure. And I mean, specifically, I can think of one time I was in a race. I was a triathlon race. I had just crashed actually. And I was like, man, this is terrible. I was in a lead group. We were doing well. I crashed out and ended up all the way to the back of the pack. But I think I might have performed the best I ever had after that, because I got nothing to lose. And I stayed with the bike group and I let it out. So like I just untapped some potential from just not worrying anymore. And it's crazy to say, like, it took a crash to do that, but when you're not so worried about what your performance is and you're just letting your body do what it knows how to do, you just untap that potential a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. All right, next question here. Would you rather achieve a personal best in every event but miss out on a medal, or win a medal while knowing you could have performed better?
For me, it's never been about the medals or the prestige or anything like that. It's always been about maximizing my potential and seeing how well I can do. So if I did everything that I could on the day and I still didn't get a medal, at least I know that I gave everything that I had. I mean, of course, winning a medal would be great too, but seeing your potential unlocked and knowing that you did a great job, that's a victory in and of itself.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for playing. Now we're gonna move to the next segment, and basically, I want to know, like, where did that come from? Like your passion for sports, right? You say you started doing triathlons. I mean, even before that, you did other sports, but it's always been sports in your life up until now. Where you're doing modern pentathlon. What was that about? Like, where did it come from?
I mean, just at a young age, I just enjoyed being active and doing sports. I played soccer as a kid. I swam growing up, and I did baseball as a kid as well. And the competitiveness was always there. And then that was what I did to relax. I wasn't great in school. I was good in school. I just didn't enjoy it. And I always wanted, at the end of the day, when you'd have whatever soccer practice or baseball practice, that's what I looked forward to. And then the games on the weekends or during the week, those were always like the highlights. And then I carried that through as I got older into my high school years. And then still, that was the only thing I was looking forward to. I switched sports a little bit. I ran track and cross country in high school on top of swimming. And again, that's still the only thing that I was looking forward towards in my day. Seeing how far I could push my limits. That's where all my friends were as well. And that's when we would hang out. That's where I found my enjoyment. And then it kind of I always wanted it to become my profession, but everybody wants that. I feel like they want to be a pro athlete or have that period in their life. So I went to college, and when I was swimming in college, I wasn't the best. So I was focusing on my school at that point, but then I found triathlon. I started getting pretty good at that, and I just ran with it. I gave myself an out, kinda, and I applied for my graduate program, but I didn't put enough work into it to actually get accepted. And I kind of knew that. So when I didn't get accepted, I was like, oh well, looks like I got to go pro in sports now. So I kind of gave myself only one option there.
Nice. And do you have any role models growing up? Like, you're like anyone around you that had that, grit and pushing through everything, reinventing yourself. Like, you say, hey, I did, triathlon. I'm gonna do this sport. Like, do you see anyone in your family or friends?
My family was great, and they always pushed me to do whatever I wanted to do and to be the best that I could. I looked up to all the great athletes, for sure. Like at that time, Michael Phelps was winning 8 gold medals in 2008. I was still in high school. Like that was a huge part of growing up. I was like, oh God, that was amazing. Watching Usain Bolt in the '08 Olympics, same thing. So I looked up to, those guys, the classic faces of the Olympics nowadays. But then my family was always behind me. And I think that it was just, I did have the internal drive. I just wanted to push myself. And I don't know if that was any one person in particular. I had a lot of friends that they always thought that. So I kind of just internalized that and been like, well, they think I should be doing that. I might as well just keep doing it because I like it. And that just kept driving me forward and pushing me towards the inevitable where I ended up now.
And do you have any, because I feel when you're growing up, you go through all of this, you're like, okay, I'm doing swimming, then I'm going to go triathlon. Like during that transition period, how was that? Was there any mental doubts? Like, man, can I do it? Like, you know what I mean? Like you have people that have done it for a longer period of time than you, right? And then you're like, okay, let me do triathlon now. You have other individuals that have been doing it for 10 years. I'm making up.
Yeah. It's happened more as I've gotten older, actually. So as a kid, I was like, oh, I'm going to be great in something. Everything I did, I wanted to be the best in.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter. But then I think my career path was different than most because I didn't just focus on one sport. I only did where I grew up, we didn't have club teams, or we didn't have the ability to I worked on a farm. That's what I did during the summertime. Is I worked and then I was a lifeguard. So it's like my sporting career was only from when school started to when school ended. And then during the summertime, I was working. I was either working on a farm or I was lifeguarding, and I was staying active, but it wasn't to the level of a lot of the people that I'm competing against or with now. They were doing sports every day, all day. That's all they had. And I think that's partially why, I'm 32 now. I'm on the older side of things, but my body still works well. I'm not super injured all the time. I'm able to still progress and get better. And I think it's because of growing up that way. I didn't beat myself up at a young age to the point where I couldn't maintain into my early 30s now.
Wow. So I have a question about the farm life. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, why not? So
yeah.
Your family grew up. Your mom.
So my mom and dad weren't. We didn't own our own farm, but so where I lived, it was a lot of dairy farms, and the guy that I worked for, he owned all the land on our street, and we only had like 6 neighbors on a 2-mile stretch of road, and he owned all the land. He had cows, and he paid cash. So I was like, all right, well, at this time I started working when I was, I think, 12.
Nice.
I started working on the farm, and I was walking cows to teach them that when they grew up, they couldn't drag you. So I used to just walk them as a kid. And then as I got older, I kept working, and I would do barbed wire fences, and I would do hay and whatever kind of stuff that he had available, because again, he was paying. And then as I got older, my friends were lifeguards out, so I became a lifeguard and then did that.
Nice.
And I still worked on the farm, but
yeah. But so then basically, they actually there's a person that teach him that they should pull like a dog, right?
That was me.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. Because when they're little, you can overpower them, but by the time they get to be full grown cow, they could easily just drag you. It's like the same thing as like you see an elephant that's got a steak, and they're like, how come that elephant just doesn't yank that steak out? It's because at a young age they taught it that they couldn't, so then it never believed in itself that it could. I mean, there's probably some kind of athletic, way that we can spin that, but it's the same purpose.
Wow.
They absolutely could. If I was like walking this cow and it needed to go somewhere, it could say no, and I wouldn't be able to get it anywhere. But when you teach them that you're in charge, then they learn.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, the jobs that, there's some jobs out there that we don't even know. And this is one of them. There we go. Hey, so go get your job if it's in a farm. Doesn't matter. Do you still in touch with these people? Like, do you?
Oh, yeah. I was just home a couple weeks ago and I saw the farmer. And I'm not walking cows anymore. I promise you that. Definitely not doing that life anymore.
He's still the same guy,
Yeah, still the same guy working the same farm. He's been doing it. He's like 60 years old, still doing it. That's their livelihood. So
where is that? We're part of you don't have to say the town, but like is it up?
I'm in central. My family lives in central New York, so like up into the like Syracuse area. People have heard of Syracuse before.
Yeah.
So and kind of in that area.
Nice, that's cool, man. So, and do you get any support growing up? Like, let's say when you were doing triathlon. I know it's as well a very expensive sport to support yourself, right? Like,
yeah.
How do you get through it? You know what I mean? Like, do you have any support from family, community? Like, how was also?
So like you said, you hustled. My family was behind me a lot, and it's at the time it was embarrassing. I didn't have any money to my name. I was living off of what my family could provide for me. I was working as a lifeguard at the time at the training center, and I was pulling 6 hours of working at the training center, and then I was training the rest of the day. That wasn't enough to sustain living, let alone the travel and the competitions and stuff like that. So my early years of triathlon, when I was in my early 20s, was I was basing everything in my life off of $5 that I could get a meal at the training center. If I could get I would get $5 meals at the training center twice a day. So I was eating for $10 a day. And if I had to go and do something, I would be like, okay, if I'm being smart, I should save that money because I don't have any to spend on. Like, so I didn't do anything fun. I would just work, train, go home. That was it. And it wasn't a glamorous life, but it was what I enjoyed doing. I had good friends that I lived with at the time too, so it's not like we were all on similar boats, so we would just hang out, and it was still a good time.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is like, if you obviously you want to share this, like when you say your friends, like you hang out with you other athletes as well, no, in the house.
Yeah. So I call it my second college experience because I went through school and I had great friends. I lived in a house with my swim teammates, and that was great. But then when I came here to Colorado and I was training at the training center, I was living with a still a great friend of mine who was a wrestler, another triathlete. One of my friends, she did judo. I lived with one girl. She was on the bobsled team at one time. Then she was a wrestler. We were cycling athletes in and out of the house all the time. But a couple of us remained like the steady. We'd lived there for 4 or 5 years, and it was like another college experience. We would go to the Olympic Training Center campus. We'd see each other all day, like while we were training, and then we'd go home and we'd hang out, and we'd do that every day. It was great.
Yeah, and people in the same boat, right? Like it's not like they were living.
Yeah, we were all in the same. We were all super broke. We were we were all just like, there was days I would be super proud of myself when I wouldn't have to fill my car up with gas because I would just ride my bike to work. Like that's where we were at.
Yeah, I mean that you were chasing the dream, no? I mean, you were like,
yeah, I was totally down for it. I didn't mind. My life has never been motivated by money. If I wanted money, I was already there. I graduated from college. I knew that I could go and go into the medical field, make a lot of money, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. Like chasing money wasn't my dream, and it's still not my dream. I need money to survive, and it's nice to have nice things, But what I do has never been motivated by the dollar sign.
Yeah. What motivates you then?
I just honestly, I love training. I love to push myself. Like today particularly, I was doing a super hard run today, and it was just hunting for the same time that I've done on that run before. I wanted to get as close as I can and get better, and that internal drive to always push myself to be better. That's a huge reward for me. I love to do it in competitions, seeing those training hours pay off.
Yeah, I can imagine like, you go into the competition, you're like, you finish that event, you're like, yes, it worked out, or like, obviously sometimes it doesn't go as planned, as we know.
Yeah, I've had. Sometimes you have more of those than the ones that have planned.
Of course, you have to those, but that's what shapes you, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I really do believe even through sports and through even school, I learned way more from the tests that I failed or the practicals that I failed than I did the ones that I passed. I remembered them because either they were an embarrassment or whatever you want to call it. I remembered those, the failures that I've had in my sporting career too. I've learned a lot from the times that I've fallen, literally sometimes off the horse, or missed my shots or swam poorly, whatever it is. I've learned from those. The ones that I succeeded, you still can learn stuff, but it's always those falls on your face that you don't forget.
Yeah. So then how do you manage the mental and physical challenges then that comes with now modern pentathlon, right?
The physical challenges are easier because you take care of your body. I think being an athletic trainer, being that I was in the medical field, has helped me a lot in my career because I was pretty broke. So getting a lot of medical attention wasn't in the cards for me. If I had something serious, then I would get it taken care of. But I was always treating myself. So doing like rehab for the last 10 years. That's what the primary person working on me has been me. I do like grass and stuff like that. I know the benefits of icing and stretching. So that, I think that's helped me continue to be here. But then the mental side, I've got a lot of great people in my life for sure that I can talk to, friends, family, that I think it's important for me. I talk to people, I get their inputs, I share. Some early on, I wasn't so open to that, but now it's the training is important to do, not only physically but mentally. When you get into a situation where things aren't going your way, you have to have those tools in your toolbox in order to pull yourself out of a bad situation.
Yeah. What do you mean that you didn't talk to about those things when you were younger? What
I think that's common. I think for most young men that not wanting to share, internalizing it because you don't want to admit, that you're struggling, or for anybody in that matter, you don't want to admit that you're struggling. And so I always try to just internalize those feelings, not want to talk about it. And unless you got a great internal voice, which a lot of us have a negative internal voice, it's not going to get better. It'll probably get worse before it gets better. So I started realizing that early on that, you have to sometimes look for help outside of just yourself. And that took a little while.
Yeah. So do you work with mental health?
Oh yeah. No, I have no problem. Like I work with a sports psychologist that has been with me for a while now, and I've seen a lot of benefit in that. When I was training in Egypt, I had 6 coaches for each the discipline, and then a strength coach. And actually, then I had a physio that I used to talk to as well, and he would work with me. But I remember I was at World Championships. Things just weren't going my way this year. I was injured, and my shooting coach, he's not a fencing coach, he was there, and he was on the sidelines, and he could see that I was visibly upset. So he came up and he's like, "You need to start breathing." And he walked me through a quick breathing exercise to like reset. And as much as that might not sound like your sports psychologist, that was what I needed in that moment. And he had known that. So it's sometimes having those people just around you can recognize things that you're not aware of right then, and will help put you in that place to bring you back.
Yeah. Is there any like? Do you feel like there's any connection if you're kind of struggling on your personal life and that kind of leaks into your professional sporting life?
Dude, terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. And I'm super guilty of that without a doubt. I've had, some struggles within my personal life that have come into my professional sporting career. And I try the best I can to block those out. Sometimes it makes it better because you're not focusing on your sport. Sometimes it makes it a whole lot worse. And you just try to do the best you can. Everybody's struggling with something. And you just have to know that you are enough. On that day, you've done what you have to do to get to this point, and then try to perform to the best of your ability.
Yeah. Do you have any like stories on like you were like you don't have to tell me exactly, but like you were like, I don't know, running and shooting and you like got a lot going on in your personal life, but like, how do you kind of like block that off and continue pushing through that day?
I mean, for my sport specifically, we have time in between each of the events. It's not like triathlon where you do the ride, you jump into the pool and then you jump into the run and then you jump to there's time in between each of our events. So it's like, as much as you need the rest, sometimes those thoughts like they'll creep in and it makes it dangerous. But usually I've got enough time to set up like a good breathing pattern and get myself ready and focused on each of those events. Once our day starts going too, you're trying to feel out your body. And if you've got a good coach, if you got good people around you, they can kind of keep you focused and centered. Even like I have great friends that are in the competition field. So sometimes I would just forget about your personal life because you're hanging out with your friends. Like I can remember we were sitting waiting for the swim to start and I was talking to one of my friends that was in the competition, and you're able to take your mind off of things because you talk about the weather, you talk about, oh, that was rough or whatever it happens to be. And I think having the people around you is the biggest thing. If you're one of those athletes that's better alone, good on you. Cause I've tried that, but I like to goof around. I like to have fun. So sometimes like everybody likes to be like so serious and tight, like even like that doesn't make your body feel better. I like to just relax and laugh and then go into the situation being more calm.
Was there any time, I mean, in your career that you felt like giving up at all?
I think COVID was a rough one for a lot of us because there was just so much uncertainty. And specifically, I was at that point, I hadn't joined the military yet and I had no money. So I was like, I wasn't working, had no money, and the sport, I didn't even know if the sport would survive. So I was still training pretty hard, and I was lucky I was in a pretty decent situation actually. But I was preparing to kind of switch. I started running way more than I was focusing on pentathlon, and I was seeing my run get that so much better. I never wanted to give up quite on pentathlon, but if it did go sideways where I wasn't going to be able to do pentathlon anymore, I was going to switch to trying to just run because I was just lost in those moments. We were all a little lost, I think.
Yeah. And then how do you overcome that period of time where you're like so much uncertainty? What do you do?
I went and made a choice for myself. So I ended up joining the military for stability and to be able to continually do my sport. I went into the military for the world-class athlete program, knowing that there was service commitments attached to that, of course, for my case. But I made that choice. I hunted for stability at that moment.
Yeah. Is that the W cap?
That is the world-class athlete program within the Air Force. So there's the different branches of service have their own athlete program. Within the Air Force, we do have the world-class athlete program similar to the Army's program. Just there's little differences though.
Nice. Yeah, I know some of the runners that I talked to. They've been in that
Yeah.
program before, right?
Yep.
Uh,
Very
but
popular in the running program.
yeah, still that way.
It's been a while, so I still think it is pretty popular. The Army's program is huge,
Yeah, true.
so they have a ton of athletes from wrestlers to shooters and
True.
all the sports. But I know that they have a good running program as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you, yeah. So now you're like doing, tell me about the Air Force. Like, what is your date like with them and how do you manage to merge, your duties with your professional sporting career?
So I'm very, very lucky. And I went through, so I ended up going enlisted during that time. It was difficult to figure out the officer side of things. It just wasn't possible. So I ended up going enlisted and I went through basic training, went through my schooling. And then when I got out of my schooling, I was able to kind of jump right into my full-time training. And so I report to somebody here in Colorado Springs and I keep up to date with him. I keep up to date with the paperwork that I have to do in order to maintain my eligibility and my career outside of just being an athlete. But I honestly, I'm very, very lucky that I was given the opportunity to train fully. Things didn't work out the way that I had hoped when it came to qualifying for the Olympics, but I gave it everything I had. I made some huge life changes. I had a ton of sacrifices that I made in order to give it the best shot that I could. And now I'm working and transitioning from the WCAP program, and our program requires you to go back to your career field. So I'm a aerospace physiologist in the Air Force. So I'm transitioning back into the active duty Air Force side of things, doing my career field.
Cool. I want to get into that, but what kind of challenges? I mean, I'm sorry. You were saying you had to sacrifice some things. What were those back then? What do you do?
So I mean, sports, you're going to make sacrifices all over the place. Specifically, I lived overseas for almost a year. We travel a lot for pentathlon. During our competition block, the competitions are kind of at the week long, and then they were stacked on top of each other. So it was almost like for 6 weeks in 2023, I was bouncing back and forth between Europe and the US every week, and then trying to recover. I was in a relationship at the time, and I was trying to make that last. And so I sacrificed a lot of my performance to try to live both of those lives. And then it didn't end up working. So I mean, I sacrificed my personal life and my relationships for my sport for sure. And then I was living in Egypt for nearly a year, and so being in a place where you're not speaking the native language, I have so many friends. I love Egypt. It's not for everybody, but I personally loved it, and I have, like I said, so many great friends, and I had a lot of great coaches. But it's just different from living in the U.S. And so I didn't have didn't have my house, didn't have all of the things that it only breaks so much stuff over there. And then it was a challenge. I couldn't talk to my family all the time because we were on such wide time differences. So it's I don't see that as much of a sacrifice because I enjoyed it, but I know from time to time there was some loneliness, there was different struggles that I faced.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I guess over there, do you have any doubts? Like, you're like, man, is it worth it?
No, I always knew that it was worth it. I knew that at the end of the day, I'll never look back and regret that. And that's kind of how I've lived most of my life too, is like, I don't want to live with regrets. If I look back and was like, oh, I should have done that, I'm going to be upset. And so when I had the opportunity to go to Egypt and train, I fought really hard for it too. There was a lot of people that didn't think that I should be going over there. And so I fought for that opportunity and then was given the opportunity. So I tried to make the best of it for sure.
Wow. That's incredible because you actually have to go to the WCAP and ask for permission for you to go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And I got quite a few no's before I got a yes.
You really were pushing the limits, I guess.
Yes.
Hey, so in the face of adversity, what strategies or mental techniques do you rely on, to keep pushing forward in sports or in life? You know what I mean?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think you're always going to face adversities, whether you're young, old, in your sporting career, in your work career, you're always going to have different challenges. And I've always tried to come at them with a more positive attitude because it's so much easier to be negative. Just that's a hard stop. It's just way easier to be negative. And that's contagious and it's harder to get rid of once you start to lean into that more. So I think my strategy nowadays is if I notice that, I try to step back and try to change the narrative because life's hard and there's no reason to make it harder on yourself. And really I'm in a great place. There's so many people that are worse off than I am. So, a constant reminder that I chose this too. So it's be thankful, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, especially traveling, huh? I mean, how many
Dude,
countries?
I've got the worst travel stories. Though, like I've started writing a book of my horrible traveling stories.
For real? Are you serious?
Yeah. I think I like my most recent one was pretty tough. So I was like, man, I should write these down because like people might get a good laugh out of them.
Oh, it's gonna be like a comical, like.
I mean, it wasn't comical, but maybe people will find it funny. It's more just like I seem to find those
Tell me the
situations.
latest story that you had.
The latest one, I was traveling to China. I missed my connecting flight because the police never showed up to register my weapon at the airport. So I not only missed my flight in China, I had to go to a police station outside of the airport. I'm giving this whole story away, so this chapter is going to be gone. But I ended up going.
It's a teaser.
It's a teaser. So I got into a police car at a police station at the airport and left the airport in a cop car in China to go to a police station. My coach had gotten on the flight, so I was completely alone, didn't know anybody, and I was like, oh, this is tough. And I had to do that twice.
Oh my God.
On the same trip there.
Do you have to like do they speak English well?
It's hit or miss. Some people speak English pretty well. Again, for every story that I have something that's terrible that happened to me, there was always like this silver lining of somebody that was just amazing. And that's how I choose to look at these kind of situations, as it gives you an opportunity to kind of peer behind the curtain and see how great humanity can be. Because there was a person in China, she didn't owe me anything. And she was the most important person in my life at that point in time because she did everything. She was translating for me. She was calling airports for me. She went and bought me water. She bought me a SIM card. She bought me my train ticket. She got cash out for me. Like, there's people in this world that just want to help, but everybody's so negative all the time that you don't allow that to happen, because there's always that like person in your head saying like, oh, why are they doing this? Maybe some people just want to be a good person. If you give people that opportunity, and I've experienced that way, way more. There's definitely people that take advantage of you, but I've also experienced the most kind people just across the whole world.
That's so.
So I'm very, very lucky.
Wow, what a story. So then this person, you were like at the police station out of nowhere.
Yeah. She was the police officer that did my first report for my gun. And I was so scared. I just didn't know what was going on. She was like, have a seat. And I was like, I'd rather stand. I was so on edge that I was like, nope, you got every document in my life right now in your hand. I'm going to stand right here and watch. And I could tell at that point that I was making her uncomfortable. So then after a little while, I was like, all right, I'll take a seat. And then she was talking to me a little bit. And then when we were at the police station, she followed. And I was like, why is she coming with? But she came with to help. And it was like, literally, I had a burner phone at the time. And so I don't even have her number in my phone. but her name translate like her Chinese name was difficult to pronounce, and so she was like, you can use this. The English translation was brightness, and I literally put that in my phone as brightness so that I could text her back, because it was just like literally without her, I was so lost. So just it's crazy to think I had to go through all of that to meet a good person, but it definitely happens all the time.
Well, I mean, it's like you said. I think is it a mindset maybe? Like
Maybe I attract chaos a little bit, and then I just take it in stride. So then somebody comes along and tries to help because they're like, "Oh, I feel bad for him. He probably needs some help."
do you
So maybe
now, Tyler? Do you read
do I all the time? Yeah,
Yeah.
I do read a lot of like different types of meditation books. I read a lot of like call them self-help books. You can call them whatever you ever want, but like just I like to learn and like to like human psyche is interesting. So I read a lot of those kind of like how to better yourself. And then I love fantasy books as well. I have a good buddy of mine he's a really into that fantasy world. I play Dungeons and Dragons with him, and so he's got me on a bunch of different series that I've really enjoyed as well. And I've got Audible. I like to listen while I'm running or stuff like that. And once I've got into that, I'm at like month worth of listening time, like for books. Like you don't realize that's a lot of listening to a book.
Wow. I mean, do you like to listen or read? Like, what's your?
It depends on. So I have a book right now that I'm reading. Like when I get ready to like go to bed, I'll read a couple pages to a chapter of this. It's a Zen mindset going into athletics. So it's showing like how your mind can transition you into positive thoughts and positive outcomes. And I like to read before bed because it kind of helps me go to sleep. But if I'm trying to like crush a book series or really understand a book, it's funny because a lot of people can't run while they listen to something, but I've found that I like the distraction. If I'm focusing on a book like on a long run, it just goes by so much quicker. So I'll do like 10 miles while listening to a book and not think about the running as much as like I may have if I was just listening to music.
Wow. Yeah, I'm curious to see. Does it? You don't feel like you miss the tempo? Like, so I feel like
look, never for like hard runs. No, I'm not gonna be like I've got like 400 repeats on the track. I'm be like, and today we're gonna talk about how you're breathing. No. Yeah.
No. It's like easy. I mean, easy.
Yeah. You have training days that are like more okay. I can load my book up and go for a run, and then there's days where like today I was doing hill repeat on over and over. Like that day I can't hear my music over my breathing. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
Makes sense. So then, so you were now you move on doing more of your professional work life, right? Like, what do you do?
Half and half. Okay. So right now I'm actually in the middle of a transition. So I'm getting, it's called PCS. I'm moving. So I'm living in Colorado Springs right now, but the military decided that my skills were better elsewhere. So I'm moving to Ohio in November to do my career within the Air Force. So I'm kind of preparing myself for that. There's a lot that goes into it. So I've got paperwork and I've got studying to do in order to get ready for my job. And then I am still I've gone back and forth on it. I was injured, unfortunately, much of last year. So I didn't have the performances that I would have liked to kind of call it a day for my career. So I think I'm going to try to go back into the WCAP program. So I got a lot that goes into that as well. I'll go back to my job and I'll work and then reapply to get back into the WCAP program so I can get back to training. So my days are a little bit of doing work for the military on top of still training and staying fit and active and getting prepared for the sport.
Yeah. So, and what are you doing? Like, what are you doing for your job right now? Is it like just a physiology or something like?
So it's aerospace physiology. So I haven't done my job because of the blessing of being in the WCAP program. I got to train all the time, so I didn't have to do that job. I went through all the schooling for it. I did well in the schooling. It was enjoyable. You're a teaching career field, and you're teaching pilots and flight crews what high altitudes are, what the like safeties and dangers are of being in these planes that can do amazing things and go up to crazy altitude and pull 9Gs. Like, not everybody's doing that, but teaching the specifics of how to stay safe and to keep the pilots to their best of their abilities, keep them healthy and keep everybody safe.
Oh, so that means that do you help them train to physically? Not really. That's not
fit. It's not. It's I'm not like a trainer. We don't do any hands-on. We're more like we're teaching through. We have like high altitude chambers. We have centrifuges in order to implement training techniques and to show the physiological responses to these situations.
Wow, that's so interesting, man. I feel like we can talk about this because I'm so curious about it.
Yeah. You and I, especially the physiology side of things, it is very interesting. When I get into the career field, I'm able to be doing it full time. I'm sure I'll find it really interesting. Going to Ohio, it wasn't in my plans at all, but I think it'll be a good thing at the end of the day. It'll give me a lot of opportunities with my career field. So everything happens for a reason.
Nice. Hey, I have two more questions to ask. You should finish with this.
Sure.
The first one is, how do you want people to remember you in this sports of modern pentathlon?
I mean, it's always great to be remembered as the best athlete or phenomenal, and I give my best. My career has been a lot of ups and downs, but I've given my all to the sport and to the training and the competitions, and I think the people around me know that. And at the end of the day, being remembered for being a good person and being a hard worker and a good athlete is better to me than being the guy that won the medal, I guess. So I hope that's at the end of the day how they'll remember me.
Nice. And last one, what would you tell your younger self knowing what you know now?
Yeah. I think it'd just be to keep the same mindset. Don't change. I haven't done anything that I didn't really want to do. Of course, we all have at some point, but I always had the dream of being an athlete. And there was people, of course, that said, don't put all your eggs in that basket. But I never thought any different of that. And then I had, luckily, a family that supported me to do that. So if I go back and talk to that little guy, just tell him to keep on keeping on. Don't change anything.
Cool. Well, wow, Tyler, thank you so much for your time, man. It's been amazing to chat with you for this.
Yeah, you too. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. This was fun.